The new year brings good news for expectant parents. From tomorrow, all parents will be entitled to 10 days leave when their children are born. This follows amendments to the Unemployment Insurance and Basic Conditions of Employment Act. Mothers are already entitled to paid maternity leave. The new laws now also allow for fathers to get paid leave, as well as parents of children born through surrogacy. We are now going to be speaking to Cosatu's parliamentary coordinator, Matthew Parks, who joins us on the line. Good evening, Matthew, and welcome to The Full View. Just a quick distinction between this particular law versus maternity leave.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. Yes, no, it's a huge victory. As you know, that currently only mothers are entitled to paid maternity leave. And this has a kind of an impact of dumping the care of a newborn child solely upon mothers. Fathers had to take annual leave, or they had to take a 3 days family responsibility leave, which is really not sufficient to care for the mother after giving birth or the newborn child. So it's something that Cosatu has fought for many years. Workers across the world have fought for paternity and parental leave. And basically what it provides for now is that all parents can apply for parental leave. It's 10 days paid parental leave. Mothers wouldn't qualify for it because they're covered by maternity leave, but fathers would qualify for it, or mothers who have a child born through a surrogate mother. And basically, you're guaranteed 10 days paid parental leave. Ideally, the employer should pay for your normal salary as usual, but if in the event that the employer doesn't pay for that your normal salary during that period, then you're entitled to claim back 66% of your salary from the Unemployment Insurance Fund, as you would normally do with maternity leave.
But you'd obviously be encouraging employers to pay full leave for those fathers who will be taking this paternity leave.
Yes, no, we'd encourage employers to exceed what the requirements of the law is. They can go further than that. They should be progressive. For example, that's already the case with maternity leave, where the public service pays workers 100% of their salary. So really, employers should embrace the progressive spirit of the law. They should support the intention, which is to give support to mothers recovering from giving birth, to help care for the newborn child and help the father to bond and so on. And they should embrace that spirit and give the workers 100% of the salary. Or they can do what some employers are doing, which is to cover the shortfall between what the Unemployment Insurance Fund would cover, the 66% of the salary, and then cover the difference in that case. And that's a progressive alternative option they can look at as well.
Sure. What does this mean for parents who go the adoption route instead? Does this mean that between whether it is between the two partners, whether it is between the mother, the father, they should decide who will then take the 10 days leave?
Sure. So the remaining part of the amendments to the Unemployment Insurance and the Basic Conditions of Employment Act is to provide for adoption leave. This is also a first for South Africa. That one hasn't come into effect yet. It will probably come into effect around April 2020. And what it's going to do is going to give one parent the option of taking 10 weeks paid adoption leave, and the other parent could take 10 days paid parental leave. The requirement there is that you must legally adopt a child 2 years and younger, so you must have the legal court adoption papers. And then it'll be up to each parent to choose which leave they want to take. And the pay provision there would also be the same, that if the employer is not paying you your full salary, that you could then claim 66% of your salary from the Unemployment Insurance Fund.
Okay, so the law comes in the next few hours. A mother who gives birth during midnight, does this mean that the father can apply for this paternity leave immediately?
Yes, so any mother who is now giving birth, the father can apply to his employer for paternity leave, or the mother of a surrogate-born child. The employer has to give them that 10 days parental leave, and the only requirement would be from the worker is to provide a copy of the birth certificate, which indicates that they are a parent of the child, obviously. And the other limitation is that you can only take parental leave once a year. So one must pace oneself a little bit if you're planning to have more than one child a year.
Does this mean that you can divide it? That, for instance, say that if you give birth today, or this is at midnight, that you'll decide to take 5 days, and perhaps if you're planning to have another child later on in the year, that you're going to do that later on?
No.
It doesn't work that way.
No, I think you would have to take your 10 days leave now. But look, if you did have a second child at the end of the year, you could still take your annual leave to cover that child's birth. Yeah.
Sure. What would you say to employees of companies that won't be accepting this, that won't be pushing through this law?
Sure. Look, so because it's now come into effect from midnight, it's the law of the Republic. The President has signed it, it's been promulgated and so on. So any employer who defies it will be violating the Unemployment Insurance and the Basic Conditions of Employment Act. They were basically breaking the law, and those workers would be entitled to report them to the CCMA or to the Labour Court, and the employers would be compelled by the CCMA and the Labour Court to honour that the law, and they could be fined if they don't honour it, and the workers will be given that leave and the pay which is due to them.
Sure.
So yeah. They were breaking the law.
So this then does mean that there should be a contract in place between the employer and the employee. And the reason that I ask this is that a lot of people are also employed in the informal sector. And what you find sometimes in the informal sector is that there are no contracts between the employer and the employee. It is just a verbal agreement between the two parties.
Sure. And look, that affects millions of workers across the country, even in the formal sector. That affects farm workers, domestic workers across the country. Not everybody has a contract. They should have contracts. That's the ideal situation. But even if they don't, this is a law and it's binding upon all employers, and all workers are entitled to it. Even if there is no written contract, you are still entitled to it. And as long as you can prove there's a reasonable expectation that you will be receiving a salary every week or every month, etc., from the employer, you are entitled to this 10 days paid parental leave. The absence of the contract won't override the provisions of the law.
Yeah. So does this only apply to employees who are South Africans?
It applies to every single employee within the Republic. So whether you're South African or you're from another country, as long as you're employed and you can prove that you have an expectation of a salary from an employer, you're entitled to this paid parental leave.
Okay, thank you so much. That is Cosatu's Parliamentary Coordinator, Matthew Parks.